Hello and welcome to another video. This one is very slightly different because before jumping into the very top grades, I want to show you how easy it is to get a 5 and a 6. Many of my students and viewers are aiming for a grade 6 at this stage, so hopefully this will help you. I'm going to take you through what grade 5 looks like, then what grade 6 looks like, then we'll jump in to a tiny scene from Lady Macbeth. We'll ignore most of it and just look at the quotations in bold. And then I'll show you part of a student essay, which is right on the border between grades 5 and 6. And then I'll show you one superb technique for making sure that you will almost inevitably get a grade 6. It's just one key thing you have to do. So let's look at grade 5. Now, the most fascinating thing for me is that grade 5 in 2018 started at only 50%. You only had to get half the marks in the paper to get into grade 5. So this is an achievable target, even if you're on a grade 3 or a 2 at the minute. So obviously you have to explain, but you only have to do this in parts. Some of your essay can explain rather badly and you'll still get into a grade 5. But the key to this is that you must write about the full task. That's what the ending of my video is going to be about. And by the full task, it simply means you refer not just to the extract, but also to the rest of the text. That's going to be key. Now, if you're always writing about the ending of the text, that means you're always writing about the full task. So top tip, write about the ending of the text, whatever it is, in the exam. Make a range of points, you'll see what that looks like. You know how to make relevant references, they are quotations or examples. Don't be the sort of student who doesn't write something because they can't remember the exact words. No, write an example. You don't have to have the exact quotation to get the marks. Then obviously you have to link these to your explanations. So even if you're using a basic P paragraph structure, which most students in the universe do, you're easily into the grade 5. Comment on a range of methods, and I'll show you what that looks like and why you don't need to be talking about verbs and adverbs and adjectives and all the rest of it. What do methods mean here? Show how this affects the reader's thoughts and ideas about a character or theme. And what's interesting here is the examiners don't really like you writing about the reader's feelings. They're much more impressed when you write about their thoughts or ideas, and I'll show you how that works. I'll also show you what relevant terminology looks like and how to talk about context, the contextual factors, how to link context so that you get the grade. Right, grade 6 is pretty much the same skills. You only need 11% more, at least in 2018, to get a grade 6, so it's not a massive jump in marks. The key differences are in bold. So here, all your explanations need to be clear. You can't have waffly explanations that don't make sense. So in grade 6, you need to read through your essay again before you finish the exam. Or, better still, practice this in your revision, reading through your essays to make sure they make sense, so that when you get to the exam, it's second nature. They make sense straight away. Then the next thing is you have to use relevant and appropriate terminology to discuss the literature. So this is also crucial. You can't go naming something a simile if it's in fact a metaphor. You can't talk about something being a play when it is in fact a poem or a novel. You have to get your language precise. You then need several relevant contextual factors, so not just one element of context. And then finally, you have to link these to the writer's perspective and ideas, and that's where point number 2 is so useful, because when you write about the ending, you're automatically thinking about the writer's final idea and perspective, and that's the easiest way to get this mark into grade 6 is to write about the writer's perspective at the end. Right, here is the full text that was in one of the GCSE papers about Lady Macbeth. That's as much as you needed in the extract to answer the whole question. I'm not going to read it all to you, I'm just going to zoom in on this bit. Come, you spirits that tend on mortal thoughts, unsex me here, and fill me from the crown to the toe, top full of direst cruelty, make thick my blood, stop up the access and passage to remorse, that no compunctions, visitings of natures, shake my fell purpose, nor keep peace between the effect and it. So apologies for my bad reading. In the essay extract I'm about to show you, you'll see that the student has just focused in, zoomed in on just these 3 parts of the text. So that is a top tip. You don't need to have everything in the scene in your answer. You can just zoom in on the bits that leap out at you. Let's have a look at the full answer. It's no longer than that. Now, when I say full, the student's whole answer was longer than this. It was just over 2 sides of A4, so have that as a target for your revision writing. You want to get between 2 and 3 pages in your 45 minutes on a question. But by full answer, I mean it's got all the skills needed for the grade 5 and 6 border just in this small section. Let's go into it in detail. Lady Macbeth needs to hide her emotions from others and wants to stop up the passage to remorse. This suggests she feels guilt and remorse and wants to block these emotions. This would shock Shakespeare's contemporary audience because she is summoning evil spirits who they believe in to help her convince her husband to kill. So this is what the examiner would call effective use of references. And the easiest way to see that is to see how the writer has zoomed in on individual words in the quotations. Remorse, spirits. So when you embed your quotations, that's what this is called, when you embed single word quotations into your sentences, you're going to be making effective use of them. And another way of making them effective is by linking them to a little bit of context. So the word contemporary means of the time. So whenever you're talking about the audience of the time, call it a contemporary audience. This will also hit number 8 of my grade 6 criteria, relevant and appropriate terminology. Okay, these are the words that you need in order to discuss literature, and contemporary audience you need to discuss any piece of literature, poem, play, novel, whatever it is. Now, having more than one embedded quotation, make sure that you've got a range of points. So again, that moves things into the grade 6. Now, the next thing I want you to notice here is the depth of explanation. So there's the original quotation. This tells the examiner that you're explaining one part of it further. And then we have this further sentence. This would shock Shakespeare's contemporary audience. So another explanation is coming, because she is summoning evil spirits, and then a further element of the explanation. So a quick shorthand for you here is to write several parts to your explanation. Don't just have a single line. In grade 5, you just had to have some explanations. They didn't need to be especially detailed. But because in grade 6 you want all your explanations to be clear, that's why you need the extra detail after the quotation. You need a full explanation in order to get that. Now let's look at how you can write about the writer's methods. This is the next paragraph of the essay. She also tries to be powerful, asking the spirits to make her a man. Unsex me here reveals that she wants to be a man in order to become powerful. She's demanding and expects the spirits to obey her. Similarly, she wants Macbeth to kill Duncan as soon as Macbeth tells her about the witch's prophecies. She wants power immediately. So these methods are the ways in which Shakespeare reveals the character. So you might not be doing this play, of course, but you're thinking, right, I've got to explain how the writer reveals the character's thoughts and personality and desires. Here it's Lady Macbeth's desire to be powerful, because that was the focus of the exam question. Now, what makes this a grade 6 comparison is the fact that I'm saying this candidate's a she, I don't know for certain, but she has then linked what she's noticed about Lady Macbeth here in the play to something elsewhere in the play. And that's crucial. Once you start linking what's in this passage to what's happening elsewhere in the play, you get much higher marks. Because writing about what happens elsewhere in the play is focusing on the full task. Now, what you will notice about this candidate is that she hasn't actually named the methods here. You know, she hasn't called this an imperative, for example. And she hasn't linked Lady Macbeth's desire to the idea of tragedy and the dramatic form. So there are ways that this could easily move up the grade boundaries by thinking about the names of the methods that Shakespeare's using. But even without those names, you can still get the grade 6. The next paragraph says, she needs to become male, a different sex, because women lacked power in Jacobean times. She needs a man's power to convince Macbeth to kill Duncan. So here, she's showing us how she understands the writer's ideas. And this is Shakespeare's idea about the role of women, and the way she does this is by using the correct terminology to describe the time of King James, which was called Jacobean. So use that word and it will automatically propel you up the grade range, because again, it is relevant and appropriate terminology. Now, you will start to notice that just using the right terminology also means you end up having several contextual factors, because you're mentioning the context several times. And the next skill is to link the context to what we understand about the character. So although contemporary women would also want to be more powerful, this would shock his Jacobean audience, because they would never do something as extreme as summon spirits. Now, this is a more sophisticated explanation because it just doesn't take the audience as one entity. It says, well, there are different kinds of people within Shakespeare's audience, and one part of the audience that he's trying to reach are Jacobean women. What would they make of it at the time? And there's a hint here that he understands what motivates them, that they feel that they're powerless in this patriarchal society. And you can see I'm starting to use vocabulary that isn't in this essay because it only touches into grade 6. But obviously using the word patriarchal to describe this society would start to elevate the answer into grade 7. Now, zooming in and treating the audience as being made up of different parts shows that you are thinking about being relevant and appropriate all the time in your references. Okay, now let's go back to that final bit of advice I promised you. So there you are, sitting in the exam, and you get this big text in front of you, and it's might not be a text that you remember reading in the novel or in the play or the poem, whatever. And so it's easy to start panicking, to start reading in and thinking, gosh, what am I going to say? I don't know what to say. What will I quote? What will get me the marks? And the panic just builds. And what happens then? Well, it means you explain in only parts rather than fully to get the grade 6. But it also means you don't write very much about the play as a whole. You kind of get bogged down into the extract. So this is the solution that I want you to practice. I want you to start your question not with the extract, but with the whole text. So this was a question about Lady Macbeth being powerful. And what you're going to do is think, right, I'm going to think how Lady Macbeth is powerful elsewhere in the text, not when she's being unsexed and planning the murder of Duncan. So let's think about that. Well, the first way I can think of is she takes the daggers back when Macbeth fails to incriminate the grooms by leaving the daggers with them so that they look like the murderers. So she has to take control of her husband there. The next time she takes control is when Macbeth apparently discovers the body of Duncan and sees the grooms and then kills them. Now this looks incredibly suspicious to everybody else because they're thinking, why didn't Macbeth let us interview them to find out what happened? What is he trying to cover up? Lady Macbeth notices that straight away, and before they can start to interrogate Macbeth, she faints in order to distract attention from what her husband has done. Next, we see her take over in front of all the nobility who've come to the feast after Macbeth's coronation. This is the feast in which Banquo's ghost appears, and she accuses Macbeth of cowardice and actually has to take command of the room. An incredibly difficult thing for the wife of a king to do, because she's supposed to be subservient, less powerful than her husband. And then, to get a sense of perspective in the full text, we can now talk about how this power changes so that she becomes powerless. So we have Macbeth keeping her innocent and refusing to tell her that he's going to kill Banquo. We also know that they start to sleep apart. That's why Macbeth doesn't know what's in her sleepwalking talk and what she does. He's just heard about it from her maidservant. He would never let the doctor, listen to Lady Macbeth if he knew what she was saying. So this is a clear sign that their marriage is breaking down. She doesn't have that sort of power over him anymore. The fact that she sleepwalks shows us how she's losing the power of her own mind. And then finally we've got this loss of power where she can no longer control her reactions to her own guilt and apparently commits suicide. So my prediction here is that you would have been able to pick at least these three things yourself right at the beginning of the essay, and you could have just gone straight in and started writing about how she's sometimes powerful but then loses this power. And rather than writing about the end of the the play, because she doesn't make it that far, you're going to write about her ending. So by starting with the play as a whole instead of just the extract, you're automatically showing that you're focusing on the full task. You will automatically make a range of points. You will automatically have relevant examples. And this will also give you a range of methods. Really, really easy to get into the grade 6. Because you're writing about the ending, this will give you a way into writing about the reader's thoughts and ideas, although we would also call them the audience here because they're not reading the play. And then finally, you will obviously be talking about the writer's perspectives and ideas when you deal with the ending of the character. Why does Shakespeare kill Lady Macbeth off early? Why does he make it happen off stage? I'm not going to give you the answers here. They're in my other videos. But it automatically asks you to think about the ending. You could also talk about Macbeth's reaction to her death, which is in many ways very unemotional, and what that says about her lack of power. Okay, if you haven't done so already, sit down with a bit of paper and write down as much as you can of what I have taught you in this video, and then watch it again in a week's time to make sure you remember it. Thank you very much for viewing. Why not subscribe if you want more excellent revision tips? And if you would like me to comment on your own writing, why not post it in a comment below? Thank you very much and goodbye.